com. All right. Thanks, guys. We're a weekly podcast. Check us out.
Joe Rogan calls out. Who does he call out? He calls out MMA judging. He says MMA judging is very flawed. And I don't know if I know you said you saw the article. I read it. Kind of sum up a little bit what he was comparing, if you can remember.
So his point is that, well, with MMA judging being flawed, is that it's a borrowed system from boxing, which was intended for a fight that takes place over multiple shorter rounds. Now boxing is, 12 rounds?
Yep. It was 15. It's 12 now.
Right. It was 15. Now it's 12. So he thinks it's flawed because it's a borrowed system and it does not translate and work well in MMA.
Yeah.
And I think you would do better to explain why that is.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you my take on the judging, because this is actually something I said specifically in a couple episodes ago when we were talking about judging, and I brought up the Machida Rampage fight as my example. I believe, and Joe believes, that they need to use more than the 10-9, the 10 and the 9 out of the whole scale of a 1 to 10. What's the point? Basically, you can only beat a guy by 1 point in a round these days, maybe 2 if you really dominate. And he's saying in a 3-round fight, let's say hypothetically, first round is razor thin. Second round is razor thin. You lost both rounds. So it's a 10-9, 10-9. You're down by 2. In the third round, even if you just unload and just have a Gray Maynard, Frankie Edgar round where you almost finish the guy twice, even if you do that, there's no way you can win that fight.
Mm-hmm.
The best you'll get is a draw. And what he's trying to say is that if a razor thin round is a 10-9 round, then a dominating round needs to be a 10-6 or a 10-5. And that way there's a little bit of a room for how significantly you win a round. And that's what he's trying to hammer in. In boxing, they do that. They take a 5-minute chunk and separate it into a few different scores. So that's what MMA is. 5 minutes is too long of a period of time to not have more of a bigger scale to work with in scoring a round. I don't know if that makes the best sense or if I summed it up the best. But I believe that they should use about a 10-5, if it's a totally dominating round, a 10-5 round is just, and then if there's points taken off, obviously it can go lower than that. And it'd be interesting. Another option would be scoring a fight as a whole. You don't need to score it round to round. You could score a fight as a whole. What do you think should be done, if anything at all?
I've always asked myself and other people, do you think this current system could be amended? Or do you think they should just overhaul the entire thing and bring in something new? Like, did you like the way they did things in Pride?
There were bad decisions in Pride too. There were a good bit of bad decisions in Pride.
There were.
Yeah,
totally.
and they.
But do you think it had a chance as far as the time limits and the scoring?
Well, the time thing is different from the scoring because I believe in Pride, they judged the whole fight, right?
Yeah.
The fight as a whole. So regardless of the fact that the first round was 10 minutes, that didn't really affect the fight judging. They judged the fight as a whole and who they thought won. And that's just the way they did it.
I think you should judge the fight as a whole. It makes it so hard for a guy to come back in certain scenarios. And it's really annoying when you know that it's impossible for the guy to win.
There's so many hypotheticals, and this is something we could really go in depth in a future episode. This was actually a guy on the MMA Share forum. If you want to interact with Alex outside of our podcast, you can get on the MMA Share message board and interact with both of us. I recently joined. I've been on there for a while, but I never really posted, and Alex has been on there for a long time, so you can interact with both of us on there. Guy, I don't know how to pronounce his handle or his name. It's like Gog or something.
I guess just go,
Yeah. So regardless, he requested that we talk about it a little bit or hinted at it, so I wanted to talk about it. It's something I've talked about before, but here's a hypothetical. Okay, let's say you judge the fight as a whole. 13 minutes of the fight. you're destroying me. The last 2 minutes, well, if you're judging a fight where this is how it goes. A fighter is winning the first 13 minutes handedly. The last 2 minutes, the other fighter just turns it on, almost gets a finish. It goes to the bell. How do you judge that fight?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
okay.
The first 13 minutes are domination by one fighter. The last 2 minutes are near finish for the other fighter.
How do I score that one? Well, I guess it would have to be, I mean, in that scenario, it sounds like it would have to be like a 10-9 for the first fighter.
Well, you wouldn't even have to do a 10-9.
Oh, you're saying...
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, this is an entire fight.
Yeah.
I haven't had my energy drink today.
Yeah.
So, no, I'd give it to the first guy.
Okay, I would too, but there would need to be a lot of stipulations. You would need to be able to inform the judges. The thing about it is, people don't realize this. The judges are not, they have no affiliation with the UFC. They are athletic commission judges, and the UFC cannot influence them. They can suggest things, but it's up to the athletic commission to make a change, not the UFC. If it was up to the UFC, something would have been changed. There would have been different judges put in place all the way back in the times when Cecil Peoples was misjudging fights and making split decisions that were clearly unanimous. I don't have the biggest issue because I can't think of too many situations where, I don't know, it's so tough. When you look at boxing and you see that Floyd Mayweather, one of the judges had that fight a draw in his most recent boxing match, you realize that boxing is so much more screwed up in their judging.
And that same judge scored it for Bradley in the Bradley Pacquiao fight,
Yeah.
which was a big stink.
Yeah, and Pacquiao,
so now
yeah.
they're thinking that like she is involved with betting and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, so many screwed up things in MMA judging. In boxing judging. So when you take a step back and you actually think about that, UFC judging usually turns out better than boxing. Because at least they're somewhat true to their system. Like 90% of the time, the right guy wins the round.
Mm-hmm.
At least 80% of the time. So I don't know the best way to do it. I really don't. I don't think a fight should be judged as a whole. So you kind of think a fight should be judged as a whole.
I do.
That would take really intelligent judges.
Which is totally possible, but it's not going to happen in the near future. Yeah. Why? I don't understand. Like you just talked about it, the athletic commission, you're right. It has nothing to do with the UFC. The athletic commission, they hire, they train, whatever, the judges and the referees. And who are these people? A lot of them are just like middle-aged or older people that they pulled over from boxing in some cases. I can understand the problems you run into if you bring in ex-fighters, especially if they were at the professional level, with bias, but that's going to be few and far in between. I mean, you're going to have to do that eventually, right? I mean, the sport is getting huge now.
If the
and
UFC...
for people to have to worry about bad judging and calls if their fight goes to a decision is crazy to me.
Yeah, if the UFC was in charge of it, they could fire a judge that they felt was scoring in a biased manner or a poor manner.
Right.
If they were in charge of it, but then you get into internal fixing. If the athletic commission was more aware of who was a bad judge and they could fire these biased judges so they didn't last, that'd be a way to get rid of them. But my opinion is keep the scoring system round to round, but use a larger range of that 10 points.
Yeah. Use all those scenarios possible. We want to see more 10-8s and 10-7s.
10-6, 10-5.
Yeah.
So, you could win the first 2 rounds 10-9. The other guy win around 10-5 and he wins the fight justly because it needs to be a calibration. Everything needs to be in relation and in ratio to the first or into a 10-9 round. So you take a very close round and say that's a 10-9. And then you have to say, well, if that was a 10-9 round, what was this dominant round?
Right.
If that is what a 1-point margin of losing is, then what is this margin? And then that's when you have to take it and say this might be a 10-5 round or a 10-7 round or a 10-6 round. I don't think you need to go so specific as to say, well, this type of kick is scored this way and this type, because somebody had said something about how you need to say that the John Jones kicks to the knees aren't effective, so they shouldn't be scored. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
Judge what you think is effective striking, who you think is controlling the fight, aggressiveness. There's so many factors, takedowns, takedown defense, getting back up, doing damage, advancing position. I don't think it needs to be a literal precise score system, like a point for this, a point for that.
Right, no, but you just have to be competent and savvy and know what you're looking at, which I feel like I could judge a fight better than a lot of these people.
You look at every aspect of it and then you think who did better. More damage, whatever it is, more strikes.
And if you know fighting and you know what you're looking at, you can easily do that. And what should never happen is, like, say the first round of Brock Lesnar, Shane Carwin. That should never be a 10-9 for Shane Carwin.
No, exactly. That's a perfect example. That's a 10-6 round right there. 10-6, 10-5.
That is Lesnar offering no resistance whatsoever. So close to getting finished, it's ridiculous. A lot of refs would have called off the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And 10-6. Sure.
Yeah. I agree.
So use the whole range. You're probably right with that. So hearing you say that kind of changed my mind. You probably could use the system that's in place in a way if you use the whole range, but I wish they would do something because it's really causing a problem.
The problem with that though is you'll really get some crazy results then. Because you're going to get these incompetent judges giving out like a 10-6 to a round that's razor thin, and it's going to be split decisions left and right where one guy has one guy winning by 8, the other has the other guy winning by 3. I mean, you can't get what we're talking about. You can't just give that to the current judges that are in place. You also have to overhaul the actual people that are doing it. That'd be like giving a newborn baby to a homeless person, dude. Yeah. Oh man, you can't. Yeah.
They'd screw it up.
They couldn't handle it, but they can't even handle 10-9. So
what's his face in the executive director in Nevada for their athletic commission? Keith Kaiser's getting a lot of heat. More so from the boxing side of things, but it's turning over into MMA too. And Big John McCarthy refuses to work for him. He won't ref any fights in Nevada. Apparently they have some beef with each other. He was talking crap about him on a podcast the other day.